What is Old Earth Creationism? Well, much like Young Earth Creationism, there's much more to Old Earth Creationism than simply discussing the age of the Earth. It also discusses issues like a historical Adam and Eve and common descent and common ancestry and things like that. But what is Old Earth Creationism, and how does it differ from the other theological perspectives on evolution? Well, those are good questions. So we're going to talk about it today on the Science and Faith Podcast. Much like Young Earth Creationism, Old Earth Creationism is also a bit of a misnomer. It's about so much more than just how old the Earth is. But Old Earth Creationism, as the name itself implies, accepts an older age from the Earth. And this is one of the immediate distinctives for Old Earth Creationism from Young Earth Creationism, is that it does accept the geological scientific evidence that the Earth is, in fact, very old. And so Old Earth Creationism is still creationism, but it accepts an old age for the Earth. So let's talk about some of the distinctives that make Old Earth Creationism its own unique perspective. And so one of the first, obviously, is the acceptance of the geological data, which points to an old age for the Earth. A second distinctive for Old Earth Creationism is an idea called progressive creation. And so what that means is that rather than saying that God created, past tense, in a final way, the earth and life on the earth at one point in time in the past, and then life just kind of continues to reproduce and generation after generation after generation. Instead, Old Earth Creationists see creation as a progressive act of God, that God, throughout the long ages of the earth, progressively creates species. And so as creation unfolds, God is active in nature and he is actively creating. And so he might create a species, for example, like the dinosaurs, for example. Millions of years ago, God created the dinosaurs, and they reproduced, and there was generation after generation after generation. But eventually the dinosaurs died out and they went extinct. And so then God would then, in his wisdom and in his sovereignty, would come into creation, and he would then create a new species. And so there's this participation between the divine and the natural, between the spiritual and the physical world, where God is actively involved in creation. And so after the dinosaurs died out, then God would create a new species, something else along the line for dinosaurs. So, but they would reject the evolution and common descent and evolutionary ancestry and all that. So much like Young Earth Creationism, they do not accept evolution by natural selection. Instead, they have this idea of progressive creationism, so that God is progressively creating species as natural history unfolds and progresses. And so that's a major distinctive for Old Earth Creationists. The third major distinctive for Old Earth Creationists is the idea of human distinctiveness. And so much like Young Earth Creationists, Old Earth Creationists would see Adam and Eve as the literal historical figures. However, Young Earth Creationists would look at the scientific data for say, example, all of the hominids, and for like Neanderthals. And they would say that Neanderthals and other hominids are descendants of Adam and Eve. They're just human beings. They're not transitional fossils. They're not transitional beings. They're not in the evolutionary history of human beings. Rather, they are descendants, fully humans, who descended from Adam and Eve. And so Neanderthals are just people who are actual humans who descended from Adam and Eve. Old Earth Creationists would say, no, we maintain that there is human distinctiveness. Neanderthals, other species belonging to the genus Homo, do not belong anywhere within the human lineage. They don't come before humans, they're not common ancestors to humans, and they're not descendants of humans. Rather, those who are in the genus Homo or Neanderthales, these are distinct creatures that God has created. So, for example, Homo erectus, he predates humans by millions of years. But Homo erectus is not human. But he's also not in the ancestry to humans either, because remember, Old Earth creationists do not accept evolution by natural selection. So there is no common ancestry between humans and Homo erectus, for example. Homo erectus is just simply a creature that God created millions of years ago in the natural progression of creation. At some point, God intervened in creation and he created this species. And it did not lead to humans. It was not, Homo erectus did not eventually evolve into humans. He's a separate, distinct species, much like elephants or giraffes. Elephants and giraffes do not share a common ancestor with humans. Homo erectus does not share a common ancestor with humans. Neanderthals, they're not descendants of humans. They don't share a common ancestor with humans. They're like raccoons. There's no common ancestor between humans and raccoons, unless, of course, from an evolutionary perspective, you go way back. But in terms of more immediate present tree, there's no common ancestor that's shared between them. Like we would say for Homo erectus, for example, like evolutionists would say for Homo erectus. So these are just separate, distinct creatures that God created some point along the line as God was involved in the progression of creation. And then at some point, and not really, we don't really need to nail down a date, but at some point, God intervened in creation and he created human beings in his image and in his likeness, and they are separate and distinct from everyone else, every other creature, every other species. So they maintain the human distinctiveness in the creation. And those are the main primary distinctives for Old Earth creationism. So just as a really quick recap, what kind of sets Old Earth creationism apart as a theological interpretation of evolution as a distinctive perspective? Well, number one, the Earth is very old. There is a full acceptance of the geological science that shows the Earth to be very old. Secondly, there is there's a rejection of evolution by natural selection. There's an acceptance of an idea called progressive creationism, that God did not create at one point in time and then stop creating. Rather, God is progressively creating throughout history, throughout natural history. He is involved and he is active at certain points in times through these divine interventions to create species. And then the third distinctive for Old Earth creationism is this idea of human uniqueness. There is no evolution by natural selection. We do not have common ancestry or common descent. Humans are not related to Neanderthals or any of the other homogeneous species, creatures. So any of the creatures belonging to the genus Homo, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Australopithecines, for example, Neanderthals, none of these creatures are in any way related to human beings. They're not in their common ancestry. They're not in their descent. They are unique, separate creatures. Humans are distinct creatures created by God, endowed with his image. And so that's just a quick overview of the Old Earth creationism perspective. If you have any questions or you have any comments, if you're an Old Earth creationist and you have something to add, maybe a perspective that we didn't cover, maybe some information that would be helpful to our listeners, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section down below, or you can send me an email. If you want to interact with me, if you have some questions or comments to send my way, my email address is scienceandfaithdortmund@gmail.com. Just go ahead and fire off a quick email, and I'm happy to get that. I'll do my best to reply in a timely manner. If you want to read more about the Old Earth creationism perspective, you can visit our website. We have some articles up there as well. Our web address is scienceandfaith.de. You can check out the latest articles on that. You can also check out previous episodes of the podcast from Season 3, Season 2, or Season 1. We've also got some special interviews up there as well with some special guests, so check those out as well. And as always, thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time here on the Science and Faith Podcast.